There's one or two people that might be joining us late, so we'll just see when they come in. Everybody should have a copy of the press release that we sent out. That includes a copy of the purchase and sale agreement for the Maurice's Campground property. I know a number of you went this morning to tour the property, and some of you were already familiar with it as well. I'm going to ask Kathleen to basically present the purchase and sale to the group. And then, what's next on my agenda? I've been running around like crazy. Basically Kathleen will present the purchase and sale. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask. And then we'll talk about how we're going to organize this group and some of the time frames that we have to meet in terms of dates that things are due by that are included in the terms of the purchase and sale. And then we'll get to basically assigning people groups and what the work assignments are for each one. And then questions and answers and anything like that. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to ask as well. We want to address as many of them as we can now.
Just one thing quickly. You don't have a quorum of the select board, do you?
I do.
You do?
So, John? Mike?
Oh, sorry. You're backlit. I can't see you.
Yeah.
Sorry. By the window.
Yes.
The hat.
And there's the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust here.
5 of us here.
Yep. And it is posted, just so everybody's clear. We're going to run these meetings of this larger group as open meetings, and we'll discuss about how that process will go a little bit later. But for now, Kathleen?
Can we do a quick introduction?
Sure. Oh yeah, that's a good idea, Roll. All right, so I'm Ryan Curley. Currently the chair of the select board. We'll see if that remains that way in a couple days. I've lived in Wellfleet pretty much my whole life, so born and raised. So what's going your way?
Hello, my name is Lara Henry. I'm currently the Executive Director of the Wellfleet Chamber of Commerce. I've lived here for about 20 years, and I'm also involved with another local nonprofit, Payment Performing Arts Center.
Michael DeVasto, also on the select board, and serve on the Affordable Housing Trust as a select board member on that trust as well. And I think most of you know me and who I am, and grew up here, and happy to be part of this process.
Kathleen Nagel. I work for Campground Real Estate. I am on the Wellfleet Housing Trust. I volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, and affordable housing kind of is my heartbeat. And I worked to help put this deal together on behalf of the town and the Gothiers as a volunteer endeavor. And also happy to be here.
I'm Andrea Aldana, Chief Program Officer at the Community Development Partnership. Before that, 5 years as their Director of Housing Advocacy. Of course, the CDP is participating in the 95 Lawrence Road project, and we've been working with the Housing Authority to offer housing services. I don't believe I'm a part of the working group. I don't know if you want to clarify that, but you invited me to see if we can be supportive.
Yes, any support that the CDP can provide would be highly appreciated. So.
I also want to say that I'm on the Tea Time Committee because I live in Eastham.
I'm Heather Doyle, I'm a Wellfleet resident. We've gone seasonally from our rental home to Maurice's for many summers, more than 12, 14 summers. The past 5 we've rented out to seasonal workers, and this year we will be there because there is no other place for us to go. So lots for us to hopefully add value in what it's been like there and what the changes can be.
I'm Harry Turkanian. I'm the current chair of Wellfleet's Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
John Wolf, current member of the Select Board, clerk of the Select Board. The quintessential summer kid who ended up moving here as a wash ashore, business owner, musician.
I'm Gary Sorkin. I'm also a member of the Housing Trust, as well as chairing the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, and we've been here for about 20 years.
Sharon Lager. Been living here year-round about 14 years, long presence before that. And am on the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust and the Local Housing Partnership.
I'm Martha Gordon, current chair of the Wellfleet School Committee. I also work with recovery support groups as a facilitator. And formerly worked at the Wellfleet Public Library. I was always very aware of what was going on with housing. In fact, I was on the Housing Authority for a while. And I'm here, I'm not sure which member of the school committee will be actually sitting on this committee, but one of us will be here. We're
Awesome.
Reorganizing after the election.
Yeah.
I'm Elaine McElroy, chair of the Wellfleet Housing Authority and a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. And my husband Stephen and I moved here in 1981 for me to take the job as the library director. We raised our 2 kids here and worked with Martha for many wonderful years, and very excited about this possibility.
I'm Nancy Najmi, and I'm here with my husband, Farid. He was invited today. I'm on the recycling committee, and we have been living full-time in Wellfleet for 2 years, and I've come to realize how important the housing issue is.
Yeah, I'm Farid Najmi, Nancy's husband, and my creativity about affordable housing, and have a small business, Wellfleet Software.
I'm Roland Blair. I've been coming to Wellfleet since the 70s, summers, vacations and stuff. I moved here when I retired in 2012. I owned a trailer at Maurice's for 3 years. I just sold it last year, built a house on Springbrook Road, which makes me a butter and a neighbor. And I think I can bring that knowledge of the campground and being a neighbor, talking to the neighbors there and help out there.
Helen Miranda Wilson, currently a member of the Select Board, formerly many years ago a member of the Housing Authority. I've been on a number of regulatory boards. I'm very supportive of improving affordable housing opportunities. I grew up here year-round, and I'm living in the house I grew up in, and benefited enormously for 23 years in another state from having a affordably supported housing opportunity, without which I could not have done my job. Thank you.
Hi, excuse me, I'm Jay Norton, the DPW director for the town of Wellfleet, and I will be in charge of more of a kind of a site reconnaissance group of looking at the infrastructure of the property and evaluating all of that. So, good to meet you all.
All right, Kathleen?
So it's pretty exciting to see everybody here and to think about this as being a project that our town could actually move forward with. Harry and myself worked with the Gothiers over the past year to put the deal together on behalf of the town. Instead of stepping you through all the legalese in the purchase and sales agreement, I can give you the gist of what the deal is, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, or we can go from there. The property is 21.25 acres. We have agreed to purchase the property with everything that is on it. So there are cabins and cottages and trailers that are owned by the Gothiers. There are trailers that are leased. They lease spaces. So private citizens own the trailers, but they leave them there year-round and pay for their spots. And then there is open space where there are people that come in on a shorter-term basis that camp there, either in a tent or maybe a little camper. Bathhouses, storage sheds, the store, a year-round house, and stuff. Most of you got to tour it today, so you got a feel for that. We agreed to purchase it for keeping, we will continue to run the trailer part as a campground for the next 6 years. And that was an important thing to the Gothiers because they feel as if they need to transition the people that are there. And a lot of people do use that as a workforce or affordable housing living situation. And we kind of felt the same way when that was brought to our attention, because if the whole idea and impetus behind this is to improve affordable housing in the town, why would we remove those people from homes that they have and make the problem worse? I think the purpose of the people that are here today is to try to get us to the special town meeting, which will be September 10th, to put before the town the most comprehensive review of the details and lay out what makes sense in terms of the deal that's been put together. Assuming that the town then decides to move forward, we would then put together a committee to decide what to do with the property. So that's exciting, but not really part of what we need to do for the next 4 months. The Gothiers will run the campground for this year. The town, one of the things we need to decide, and that's in our plans for this, is do we run it as a town or do we lease it to someone to run it for the town for the next 6 years? Trying to think of other details that might be important. The Gothiers have agreed to consulting with us for a minimum of 1,500 hours for next year to make sure we get off the ground and it's a smooth transition, as well as showing the town how to shut the campground down at the end of this season, and that could be before and after the closing. The closing would be scheduled to be in October. Harry, have I missed anything pertinent?
Part of what we have to do between now and town meeting and closing, in addition to education and outreach, is we have some due diligence to do. We have to evaluate the financial information we get from the sellers so that we can be sure we can put together a plan to operate the campground that makes sense. We have to develop a good understanding of the existing conditions so we know what we might be facing in the way of maintenance and repair costs. We have to address the septic system, which will be a little bit tricky. So there's a whole bunch of things that we really need to do between now and September, some of them on very short time frames. There are some things that we have to get done by the end of May. But they all are part of our due diligence to make sure that we understand what we're buying and that it meets our expectations. And then we decide to proceed or not proceed depending on what we learn.
And I guess I would add to that while we hadn't gone into the purchase or the idea of purchasing it with thinking that we were going to be running the campground, we did realize in short order that that also would likely return revenue for the town that could help to defray the cost of the debt service on it. And so that's one of the things that we're in the process of verifying in terms of the financial information that we've been given. Does anybody have any questions on the deal being put together or what the deal is?
In terms of time frame and the shorter time frames, where does the need to get septic variances from the health department fit into that? How much time do we have to work on that? Is that one of the earlier things we're going to have to?
No, it's right up until closing.
And closing is going to be October 31st.
Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah. We can all-
That's a pretty key element, I think.
We'll
Yes,
trunk or
absolutely.
treat there this year or something.
Yeah, John, our idea is that one subsection of this group will deal just with,
Oh,
there are 35 cesspools on the property. So we need to basically be granted a waiver. Health Department, DEP, we're not exactly sure who's gonna be involved yet. We need to figure that out, and then present our case. The attorney for the Gothiers is Ben Zender. He noted there was some precedence for commercial properties where longer extensions have been given on septic waivers. So I should also just say that the Gothiers have been patient. They have just been the very best partners we could have asked to work with. As Harry reminds me regularly, the wheels of municipality churn quite slowly. And I'm not accustomed to that working in real estate, where things move pretty quickly along. And truthfully, when we first talked about this, it was June of last year. So it has been a long haul to get to here. And they have just been terrific every step of the way on that. And they want this for the town. And so they will work with us and be as accommodating as possible to get us the information and help us get the things that we need. And so it's not always that way, and that's really, just a nice part of this.
Is the store like sort of completely separate? So we're not under any obligation to run the store for 6 years?
We're not under any obligation to run it, and, assuming that we're buying the property, I think one of the things we would look at is, does it make sense to keep the store, run it as part of the property, sell that piece of land, lease the store? I mean, there's lots of different options, but no, the only obligation is to run the trailers. And we do, I should say, we do have a lease with a year-round tenant in the year-round house that we need to honor for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and the discussion as to what to do with the store long-term is not going to be the focus of this group. We're mostly focused on everything that we need to do to get to the special town meeting in the fall. And after that, plan is to form a committee that will discuss and, plan out the long-term uses for the property, and that's going to take a longer period of time. The other thing with the store, it also factors into whatever the plan is to for running the campground for 6 years as well. They could factor into that. I would ask if anybody has any questions about the property.
Yeah, through you to Kathleen. You said our only obligation is to lease the trailers. What about those small units that aren't trailers? Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, so there's a number of cabins there as well.
Well, this was not entirely clear, but in the process of this, we had discussed the trailers being the agreed upon area, and they had originally drawn a map and basically said, this is what we would like you to run. That still left about 5 acres that this is maybe outside of the scope of this working group, but there are potentially 5 acres that could be developed earlier than that 6 years if something were to be able to be performed at that time. So it doesn't tie up all the land.
That acreage includes where the cottages and cabins and store are, and the house in the front of the parcel.
Harry, why don't you share some of the deadlines that we have to meet?
See if I can get them from memory. We are due the financials from the seller, I think, last week. And we don't have a complete set of financials yet, but we have 45 days to react to them, I believe. And we also have a 60-day due diligence period for examining the existing conditions of the property. So that would allow us to look at plumbing, electrical, roofs, pavement, whatever is there, so we can understand what we're taking on and if we want to take it on. We have the ability to opt out of the deal should we find those things to be unsatisfactory or too burdensome, or should we find, say, for example, a hazardous waste site on the property. The septic contingency is for us to seek a waiver from the Board of Health from their upgrade on closing requirement. It won't avoid having to, at some point, address the septic system, but we will be asking the Board of Health to grant us a waiver so that we can continue to operate the existing septic system, cesspools, while we continue to operate the campground. And we did that because it doesn't make sense to design, build, and install a septic system to service what's on the property now if it's not going to be there in 5, 6, 10 years from now, and something else different is going to be there that has a different requirement. So we want to avoid having to do a big ticket item twice. Hopefully we'll be able to convince the Board of Health that it's an appropriate thing to do. But this is different from asking for a variance to keep the existing cesspools forever. We're asking for a waiver of the upgrade on sale provision to give us 6 years to address that. The deadline for that is by closing, and I think the contemplation of the agreement is not crystal clear on it, is that we won't approach the Board of Health until after the special town meeting. But that's, as I parse the agreement, that's not exactly what it says, but that's what the discussion leading up to it has always been.
And the idea of that is to not bring the wrath of the health department down on the Gothiers' current situation by us being like, oh, they've got 35 cesspools, they want to sell it, and that somehow that triggered that they have to upgrade it. And so we agreed that we would not do an official, we know that the cesspools are an automatic fail. To be able to sell your property, you need to upgrade them to Title V septics. So we already know without inspecting them that that's the problem. We also know that it's a public water supply that gets tested by the state, and that the water there has been fine, and that the cesspools apparently are operating excuse me, well still. So it's our hope that we'll be able to work out something. If we cannot, that's also a way out of the deal for us. And within the purchase and sales agreement, there are a number of opportunities for the town to walk away if they should decide to do that.
Jay, why don't you talk about some of the due diligence that you'll be coordinating on?
Sure. So we had sat down a few days ago and kind of outlined, looking at the dates that we need to comply with. Some anticipated actions from an infrastructure overview. So I'll be working with the building inspector in town, Jim Madera, as well as my facilities foreman, Peter Williams, and electrical inspector, Sean Donahue, to have a holistic overview of all the structures on the site. We'll look at maintenance of roofs and siding and interior features. We'll look at the grounds. We'll look at pavement. We'll look at the water system and electrical system. So with that, the milestones that we have to look into, we're looking to have a report in draft form to the working group by, let's see, June 7th, week of May 23rd. So it's definitely going to be time crunching. So we don't have that much time to do this, but we need to do it from 60 days of the purchase and sales signature. So I've initiated the group. We're going to meet next week, and we're going to reach out to the Gothiers and come up with a date to get a really in-depth analysis of everything there. So got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're definitely on board to do it.
So the idea too is for us to be able to run it for the next 6 years. We don't need the buildings and infrastructure and everything to last beyond that, because obviously we're not going to keep it in its current configuration. And so Jay's team knows that that's the eye that they're looking at it.
Yeah, basically, I mean, I'm looking at it as any other facility in the town. I'm looking at, you know, projecting future maintenance within that time period, so.
John?
Yeah, what was the date that you planned to have this ready?
So we're planning on having it ready for a select board meeting, for June 7th.
7th,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So you'd have a
Wow,
chance to
that's-
weigh in just in advance of the 60-day.
And we would report back to the working group, and the subgroup that will be working on that first, as well. So I guess that kind of dovetails into that. So the idea is, so, you know, it's a large property. It's kind of a complex transaction, due to, you know, that we're committed to running the campground for the next 6 years, and all the additional issues that brings into play. So a lot of the work is going to be centered around, you know, basically what we need to do to operate that, and to have those answers for the voters of the town before we go to the town meeting. We'll also put together a financing plan for the property, and that might include certain restrictions on different parts of it based on the funds that are used. So we basically have identified, it's 4 working, right? No, is it 4 or 5? 5. It's 5 working groups. One is to conduct the due diligence of the grounds and buildings. That's the current conditions, the expected maintenance costs, water system, electrical systems, the condition of the structure is, you know, and that is a lot of the work that Jay will be doing. We've kind of assigned certain people to different tasks already, based on the skills that they bring to the table. So for this, and there's a couple people that I haven't really assigned yet, and depending on, what they would prefer to do, we'll try to slot them in. But for the due diligence, the grounds and buildings, we've picked Jim Hood and John Wolf. They're both familiar with those types of systems. Jim is a member of the Board of Water Commissioners, and will work well on that. The other thing is, I don't know if it was, we don't really bring it up, but I did talk to Jackie Beebe yesterday about the ability to connect the property to the Eastham water system, and they said that was a possibility, or they didn't have any issue with it. So if we did, the town would have to pay for the full installation, of course, because it's, within our town, it's not subsidized by Eastham to construct infrastructure in our town. So that is a possibility, and that also makes this property really appealing for housing going in the future. So that's a major plus for that. For the septic, right now, it's Harry and me. I was hoping Corey Brundage would be here. I guess get tied up, so if he's available, I'll be slotting him into the septic. The financing of the purchase, this is what is the blend of financing options. We have community preservation funds, we have on the warrant at the annual town meeting, we have articles for adopting short-term rental community impact fees. And so for the CPC funds, they carry certain restrictions. It either has to be open space or affordable housing. For the short-term rental tax, not short-term rental, the community impact short-term rental, that includes a restriction on 35% of the funds collected there. It either has to be affordable housing or infrastructure related. The remaining 65% is unconstrained. There's also, the town has received funds for ARPA. One of those has already been transferred to the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. There'll be another payment of around, I think it's like $211,000 or something in July. And there are some funds available from the county for the ARPA, through their ARPA funding, but it's very limited. Those funds also include restrictions on how they can be used. So the financing group is really going to have to be looking at, how are we financing it and dealing with the restrictions that would be accompanied with using different funding sources. And it might include deed restrictions. I've talked to Gary about this, and Harry as well. So for that group, right now, Gary and Lane, I've put myself on there. I'm kind of concerned about my workload now, though. So if somebody else wants to be on that, I'd be open to it. There's a financial review and an operational plan for the campground. This is they kind of go together. So the town is planning to hire a CPA to review the financial statements of the campground to determine, what the costs are, what the line items are, what the gross is, and that kind of feeds into whatever the model is that the town will employ to running the campground for the 6-year period. For that, right now, Mike, I'm going to have you on that group. Hopefully Damien or Nicole Parkington, they said they would be available. I'm not sure though.
Susan Spears said she'd be willing to work wherever we needed her, and we had talked about her in that group as well.
Okay, so Susan Spear, I guess Roland, I think that might be good for you. And then Lara, would you want to be on that group? Okay. And there's a couple of people that aren't able to attend today. I know that Overcon is interested. I just haven't slotted her in yet. And then there's basically what I'm calling communications. So this is a collection of questions from the community so that we can start answering them about the property. It might include a survey. And then there are, they would develop presentations, distribute information to the community, and really be the public, the ones developing the message that goes, or presenting it and developing the materials. So for that, I would like Sharon, Heather Doyle, and then Sarah Pachukas. We said that she wasn't sure if she was able to make it this week, or this meeting earlier today. And so that leaves somebody from the school committee. It depends on whoever it is, where they would feel best suited. I've reached out to the PTA, and I'll get back in touch with them. They were going to have somebody, they just haven't figured out who yet. For the people working on the financial review and operational plan for the campground, I've talked to Cape Cod SCORE, and they will make 3 advisors available. So you can have basically one-on-one consulting with those advisors to help develop a business plan for the property. And Farouk. I don't know where to put you. I want you I don't know.
Where do you want to?
So Farouk's background is IT. So he has a really critical skill set. So
I would say the ops plan and the financial due diligence, to me, that is the biggest job with the most responsibility, because that is going to be looking at what the campground brings in, what the liabilities to the town are, and presenting what is the best plan for the town to move forward in a way that we can then present that at town meeting. So, I mean, if you're willing for that, and Ryan thinks it's good, I just feel like that I think the people who are working on that are gonna have the biggest job.
So I might submit another value, because as a stakeholder now, I'm hearing this directly affects me. So I'm psyched on the survey piece. Technology is moving quickly. Those of us who work from home, I personally do not have a hotspot, but others rely greatly, as would seasonal workers, to the Wi-Fi. So it might be really of high value for you to help mature that in a way that's not crazy, because we're going to maybe take it down in 6 years, but that piece will be important, because that office gets full of people complaining. Not me,
yeah,
other people.
there are certain areas that don't have great connectivity of the campground. But they do have a wireless system installed.
Yeah, it's been very good, but I knew years from now, expectations keep going up and technology's moving, so just to value.
There's been a couple of the units.
Yeah, there is an existing contract for that. I believe it was disclosed in the P&S. I'll take a look while you guys keep talking.
And then Nancy, so depending on Farouk's work schedule, Nancy will, they're a tag team, so, just so everybody knows. And that would be the same if Damien or Nicole Parson can join, because Damien goes out fishing for extended periods of time. Are there any questions about that, or am I missing anybody at this point? Okay, so the grounds, you'll be really working with Jay. So that's John and, who did I say?
You said Jim.
Jim Wood.
But we had, I'm not sure, maybe that was a decision that you made. Or
Yeah,
Jim.
it was.
Okay.
I talked to him about it
Okay.
while we were doing the walkthrough as well.
Okay, good.
So,
Jay, you know how to reach me, right?
Yes.
Harry?
Yeah, just the purchase and sale agreement includes a disclosure that there is an existing contract with digital services for satellite internet services, which extends through April 1st, 2026. So we'll inherit that contract.
Because they just got a new satellite company last year.
So
Yeah.
that was disclosed.
Are you able to use that too?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi was better than the company had
It
before.
was great, yeah, it was very good last year, but I just know that the bars keep moving.
I found it spotty last year, I thought it was better the year before.
I'm on the main drag.
Oh, it's way down the back.
Yeah. So I just want to validate the vision, because I'm also going to walk out and run into stakeholders and people that might want to know. Is the idea that after 6 years we have seasonal worker housing, or we have year-round family housing?
So that's where this
The
group
business
is
plan.
not going to get into.
Thank you.
That's when we form a committee to do
The
the
business
long-range
piece.
plan.
Okay, gotcha.
So the goal, sorry,
Go ahead.
not to cut you off, Ryan, but the goal of this is to move this forward to town meeting and get it passed, assuming that that's what everybody, in doing their due diligence feels is the right thing for the town. To at least present to the town everything that we found so that they can make an educated decision. And then once that happens, I mean, in my eyes, it's gonna be lots of wonderful things.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we have to get to that before we can then figure out what it can be.
Yeah.
So the ops and the running of the campground is more, do we run it, what makes more economic sense? Running it as part of the town and using staff and hiring people, or leasing the campground out? And so we need to kind of vet those options, because we have no idea what it costs or
Yeah.
what it will mean or
Yeah.
whatever.
In the 6 years.
Correct,
In the 6 years.
correct.
Yeah, and if somebody finds a hard question, we want to know about it sooner rather than later. So that's part of this process, is try to get those questions asked and try to answer them. And if there is a significant issue, we need to, discuss it and figure out what to do. Gary?
I have one question. Are we contemplating doing a physical survey of the property to really understand what we're buying? And related to that, is there a budget in the town to pay for that or any other?
So, right now, the funding source would be through the Affordable Housing Trust for any of that work. The majority of the property is land recorded and registered land. I don't know. So this is it kind of feeds into the financing thing as well, where you might find out that you need to survey to a certain extent to meet the terms of the financing options that are chosen to finance the property. So I would ask those questions, and probably, you'll probably be in touch with council and,
Let's just ask a separate question, I'll let
Sure.
you finish doing it.
No, I'm done.
Do we have any idea about the next round of ARPA funding that the county is putting together, how they're breaking that up yet, or is this still a fight between the
I haven't received anything official. The Provincetown Independent did say the county's kind of divvied it up, and Wellfleet will get somewhere around 211,000.
of the total funds available left?
Yeah, and it did not identify housing as a use of the funds.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So, but as I said, I haven't received that officially.
I haven't seen it.
So it might be different when we actually look at whatever it is from the county.
Did it say what the source was in the newspaper article?
No.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll follow up on it, but that's consistent with, I had talked to our rep, and that's consistent with what she was saying a week or two ago, so.
I'd be available to work with Jay on the grounds and all the septic.
Okay.
What I do for a living is install communications and wiring systems.
Oh,
So I
okay.
have some knowledge of that.
All right, so, yeah, that would be great. That's why I was asking you what your background was.
Yeah. I work closely with Corey before with some septic stuff too.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Corey again. He was gonna come. I know he had a meeting earlier today though, so.
Hey Ryan, could
Yep.
you just read the charges of each thing through clearly
All right.
one more time, just each charge for each working group, so everybody,
Sure.
I think everybody was kind of like listening as we were going, but I
Yeah.
think it'd be helpful to just read the charge of each group so we all know exactly what.
So, I guess Jay, Jim, John, and Roland, due diligence of grounds and buildings, current conditions, expected maintenance, and this is of the water systems, the buildings, the electrical systems, the structures. I guess also I would include, the Wi-Fi system probably in that, because it's, septic, I think that's kind of self-explanatory. It's going to be complicated. That's Jay, Harry, Ryan, or myself, sorry, hopefully Corey, and then I guess, And then financing, so that's, what is the blend of the financing options, the restrictions that accompany them. And that's Gary, Elaine, maybe myself. I don't know if there's somebody else who might want to join that group. Is there anybody? So, just asking now. Martha, you want to do it?
I hate budgets.
Okay.
I'm not gonna volunteer right now, but let's just see how much work goes into the other.
Yeah, the financial review and the ops plan. So that's, there will be a CPA hired to review the financials, determine what the gross is, and because that kind of feeds into, whatever how the town operates the campground. It's develop a plan on how the campground can be run and what are the models that might be applied to it.
That's all under financing?
That's a financial review and ops plan. The financing is,
Oh, okay.
is like, yeah.
Kind of separate.
Yeah.
Related.
I might have somebody, I'm going to twist an arm. And,
Okay.
I'll get back to you later.
Okay. And that's Mike, Farouk, Susan Spear, Roland, and Lara. And hopefully Damien and the whole department.
Okay.
And we also may have someone from FinCom.
Yeah.
Fred called me afterwards. I think that they're gonna work something out with that.
Yeah, we'll figure out where to place them once somebody is on. And then communications, collect questions from the community, maybe survey. Develop presentations, distribution of information in the community, and other things, just really to communicate, essentially. Yes, roll. Sharon.
It all works. Are we thinking that we might like to have a forum, a community forum before town meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we sort of need to find a date for that and work backwards so that we have as much information from all the different working groups sort of collated.
Yep.
by now.
So some of these deadlines are pretty tight. So you'll get information well before special town meeting. I imagine that we also want to do outreach to the other groups or other bodies. Maybe something at the adult. Adult Activity Center.
COA.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to get it right, eventually I will.
So do we want to, how will we pick a date for the forum? Is that something we
I
need to
think
do
that-
kind of ahead of time too?
The communications.
I think we've already been, we've been in touch with John Marcy, who's going to be
Yeah.
the liaison, and I put him in touch with Ryan.
Okay,
So I think that's in the works.
okay, so we don't want to have it in July, hopefully. I mean,
I think they were talking about a date in August.
Okay. There might be more than one. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a significant purchase. I mean, we want to hear from people. We wanted to present the property, and we want to address any of their concerns and questions.
and then the other piece is, I remember Gary saying, we don't want to draw all the attention away from 95 Lawrence Road either. So, because isn't there a big thing at town meeting for that also? No, there isn't? Oh, okay,
No,
okay,
it's
good.
pretty much funded.
It's in the bag.
Okay.
Except for maybe that they might make an ask for the Community Preservation Committee. But other than that project is all ready to go.
Okay, perfect.
So this one actually comes in nicely in terms of the timeline because, 95 Lawrence Road will be done. And then we'll be gearing up to start this, whatever happens
Okay.
on this property.
Ryan?
Yep.
I believe the town did request some technical and financial
Yes.
assistance from Mass Housing Partnership. I think they would be thrilled to hear what you've set up, but ideally, they should be able to assist one or two of other of these committees in
Yep.
some way, so I hope we'll.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We did send a letter to the Mass Housing Partnership as well, that requested assistance. as soon as we hear back, we'll figure out how to do that. And basically, these subgroups will meet separately from the main group, just to, based on your schedules, because it's hard to get a large group all together, and work out the components you're assigned, and then we'll bring it back to the main group and present it at that point. And for that, I guess, what works in terms of people's schedule for having these meetings, that I'm expecting about every 2 weeks for the first, hopefully for the first month and a half, because those are our tight timelines, and then after that, there's we have a longer period of time for the other elements. So what works for people's schedule?
Do you think maybe we should just break off into groups so that we're going to be meeting separately, and then each group can kind of figure out a date that works for that group?
So that's exactly what that will do. So like these.
Do you want to meet in this big group again? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's about every 2 weeks or so.
Okay, gotcha.
I think the idea with this big group is that at least a spokesperson from each work group would attend the every 2 week meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone from the work group who wants to come is of course welcome, but not that everybody would have to come, but that we'd at least be able to keep on track with where groups are and if somebody needs more help or, what the situation is.
So does that help things a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan, can I clarify something?
Yep.
So you have 2 groups, one with John and Jim and myself and Roland, and then another group with you, Harry, and
Corey.
Hopefully Corey.
Okay, so those are 2 separate groups,
Yes.
correct?
The septic is going to be complicated.
Yep, okay.
So,
Just wanted to clarify that.
I mean, it kind of needed to be.
Should someone from DPW be involved in that separate group, I would think?
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm on the 2 groups.
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I've also talked to the incoming town administrator. He was going to try to be here today, but he still has a job elsewhere right now. So he'll get involved as we go once he's on board. So I'll check in with him and figure out where he wants to be with things. Harry?
Do you have any sense at this point what we might need to fund our operations up to town meeting? So that I can sort of plan for the trust to address that?
I just have that one estimated cost for the CPA that I gave you. But it's.
Buried in my email somewhere? Okay, I'll go look for it.
But, I mean, we have to see
Yeah.
about the records, which could affect, that.
Yeah.
cost.
I think that needs to be another conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has Mass Housing Partnership gotten back to us yet, or are we still waiting?
Not yet.
For that?
Oh, and I guess, what can the CDP do to assist?
I think it depends on where you need us. I mean, the most obvious place is communications.
And that's what we had kind of talked about,
Yeah.
that from a marketing and a messaging, and, I mean, that we didn't really flesh that out as much, but, I mean, we're looking for that to be like updating our website information, doing frequently asked question updates, press releases.
Getting ready for forums.
Yeah, being on OMR, op-ed pieces, I think any type of communication possible.
So one thing that I've sort of, in the past, like, I don't like to send anything out without it being reviewed.
Sure.
So the question is, who do we want to be reviewing with? Like, is that something we bring up at the every 2 week meetings and say, this is what we're thinking of? Yeah, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Unless it becomes a crisis in between, and then we can address that, but yes.
Just to follow up on that, so the review that you're suggesting, would that be better rather than waiting for a 2-week meeting to just do it over email or something, and because we're trying to critique what is written and say.
But my only, I guess, my only concern is I'm always really worried about open meeting laws and like sending out
Chain
to,
deliberation.
you know, a wide group where there might be quorums from different committees.
Yeah.
Could be problematic.
So
I think communication updates every 2 weeks is a good amount of
Okay.
time and whatever that
Yeah.
we should be able to, especially once we get a little further into it. I think it might be a little bit more important and imperative now because there's so many questions and so much that people don't know. and
Well,
we'd like
what
to-
I'm thinking is maybe the first couple of weeks with Sarah, we'll get together and we'll sort of come up with a plan for how we think it might happen, and then we'll review it at that
First
time,
meeting.
and
Yeah,
then we can move
perfect.
forward on those different
Yeah.
facets.
Right.
Does that sound good? Heather?
Yeah, for sure.
and
'Cause
it will-
email feedback is difficult.
Yeah, because it's one-off.
It's just
Yeah.
tough.
it would make sense for you to also talk with the Gauthiers about doing outreach to the residents of the campground as well. To
Yeah,
address
I
any of
have to
their,
move.
well,
No, it's great. It's great.
John?
We'll be there.
When we have our every 2-week meetings, are we going to need to, what do we need to do in order to comply with OML, since we'll have a couple of
we'll do
forums?
postings like we did today.
Okay.
And those meetings will be conducted in open session, recorded for anybody who wants to see what happens. And of course, if somebody wants to come in, they can. So, yeah. And for the, so who had their hand up over? Anybody? No. Okay, I thought I saw another one. Elaine?
Just rule of thumb from Mass Housing for basic due diligence can go up to $50,000. I'm hoping maybe we'll see at least half of that from them. I don't know if you want to start by asking the trust for
Yeah,
something like that.
it's asking the trust when we have to. You know, if they might have to fund the CPA, but we need records first before we do that. I've talked to Charlie about it. I guess, so for the every 2-week meetings, does Friday work well for everybody?
At this time, every other Friday.
What, at this time?
If that works, we can do it at a different time if that works better.
I might say maybe noon, like kind of during lunch hour for those of us that are coming from work.
That'd be good.
If that works for.
I guess it's good times, for my point of view.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
for me,
tides.
the tides, and I just skip the tide. It's like,
Well,
It's a
but like
good
we
reason.
said, as long as we have one person from a
Right.
individual work group that can then bring that information back, nobody should feel pressured that they need to be here every 2 weeks if that becomes too heavy of a lift. The idea is that by having the separate work groups, they're working outside of those 2 weeks and then they're reporting back to the group as a whole so that everybody that's involved knows what's going on and that, you know, we're not operating in a vacuum.
That works for me.
And that there will be information for the public as well.
yeah.
So, all right, is there any questions?
Do we have a time?
I guess Friday at noon.
Okay.
I think maybe we need to meet in our small groups just to figure out the
Yes.
timing for us to meet, because we should all meet fairly soon, I think, to get the ball rolling, you know?
Maybe we should break out now.
Yeah.
So, how do you all communicate and comply with open meeting
We're all
laws?
here.
So, I actually I forgot to put it out, so, I don't know. Yeah, so sorry, this is maybe, I've just been running like
Too many
crazy,
balls in the air.
so, alright. And I do have copies of Jay's work plan for the people that's applicable for as well.
So the next one, Ryan, will be Friday, May 13th. I think it's 2 weeks from today.
Do you want to do one on Friday the 13th?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's my lucky day.
Because noon works for me, because I've got to fit it in between something that finishes at 10 and something else that starts at
So we're saying,
1:30.
Noon on Friday, May 13th.
okay.
That works for me. I can't work for another thing myself.
Bring your garlic, I guess. You know.
So yeah, I think it makes sense for us to divide into our mini groups. Come up with, you know, when you want to get together or how you want, I mean, if you want to meet virtually, if you want to meet in person, if you want to divide up what you feel you're going to be working on. And thank you to
And
everyone.
Sarah is in fact on board?
Yeah, she was going to come today and just couldn't.
Hey, Ryan, does anybody have paper from each group so we can write each other's names and phone numbers down for each individual group so we can contact
So
them?
what I'll do
Email address, or Ryan can do it.
is after that's filled out, I'll just send the list to everybody and
Okay.
then the individual groups with the contact information.
Okay, that sounds fine. And then are we supposed to organize in our groups and basically organize who's chairing the group, or should we just sort of play it by ear? I mean, it does make sense to have somebody, I think, just decide who's gonna organize the conversation and create an agenda for each meeting.
Oh, Jay, does the 12 o'clock on Fridays work for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the inspections group, obviously Jay's taking the lead already in terms of that. And then the rest of the groups, you guys can decide. Sharon, we kind of thought maybe you'd be in charge of marketing, but you guys can decide.
It'll be a group decision.
No, Ryan, I think.
What? Yeah, travel.
Some H&R Block.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
Who's doing the due diligence?
it'll be up to us as individual groups to figure out where we're gonna meet.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can meet.
Where,
We could
how,
probably
when.
do it.
Yeah, where, how, when, you can meet in person.
We do it at
or you can
DPW.
meet virtually.
Yeah.
So,
If there are questions during the, while you're meeting or whatever, feel free to reach out to Ryan or myself, and we'll point you in the right direction or get your answers for you.
or try to.
Actually, that's good. We don't have to post a meeting to reach out to you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Very exciting.
The trouble I
Thank
see
you
is
all.
I'm in 2 groups,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be kind of difficult to, I don't know, kind of navigate through that. I might designate somebody else from the DPW to be in one of the other groups.
That's fine.
I
To
think,
make
Jay,
it
the
easier.
timing is going to work out for you though, because you're
Yeah.
gonna do the inspections and then you're gonna be done
Right.
with that. And then the septic part, we're not gonna.
That's kind of gonna be on.
Later,
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, septic.
But
Yeah.
inspection should be your priority,
Yeah.
especially with Ryan and Harry working on the septic part and if Corey's involved. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really more, what
Yeah.
are our next steps in terms of what do we have to do to try to get that waiver and who are we getting it from, and getting our arms around what's on the property.
Perfect, all right.
As you're writing your names, if you could also include which committee, subgroup you're on, so that we can all know who's in our subgroup.
I can email everybody right after this meeting, so,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that would be the easiest for everybody. Sorry, I didn't bring more sign-up sheets, but yeah.
So should we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I mean, do we need one?
I think if we're in a public meeting where
Okay.
where
Okay.
we've posted it, so I guess I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
We don't need the roll call, because we're
Oh.
in person.
Sorry.
Say aye.
So in
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.